Hi, my name is Dr. Meredith Watkins, and I'll be teaching your Nursing 415 Transcultural Nursing Care course. And I am so glad that you're in this course with me this semester. This is our first week's pre-recorded video lectures. And the purpose of this is really just to give you the need to know information. Keep it short as I can, short and sweet and simple. And then we'll take time in class to really discuss and explore and apply and analyze. So it may feel a little clinical and a little just kind of like matter of fact on some pretty important topics and concepts and terms. But again, the point of this is to make your study time very efficient. So here's how I want you to use these videos. If you're a quick thinker and you like for things to go faster, remember you can always increase the speed of the playback of this video to make it go faster. If you're a person who enjoys repetition, you can always watch this back or listen to it on your commute into school to have some repetition in your life. I encourage everyone, no matter where you're using this video, to have a pen and paper, a physical pen, not something typed, and take notes actively. Pause the recording, write things down, unpause it, and start it again. Because learning science tells us that our brain actually works better when we actively engage. So that's the point of these videos. Active engagement, writing things down in your own handwriting, and then coming to class and we will explore this and discuss it and analyze it. And I cannot wait to go through this course with you. So let's go ahead and get started on our week 1 pre-class lecture. Okay, so this first week's lecture is really just to introduce you to the concept of transcultural nursing. Transcultural nursing is a specialized area within the discipline of nursing, blending nursing theory and the study of humans, anthropology. It includes nursing competencies on how to provide culturally competent care, meaning great care for patients no matter what background, culture, belief system they come from, and understand the multicultural and psychosocial constructs that influence care of patients. Did you know that not every patient that you walk into the room expects the same things of you or expects the same things out of their healthcare team? And so really understanding what our patients want helps us to provide that really important patient-centered care. Transcultural nursing is a specialty within nursing, and it started as early as the 1950s by a nurse theorist named Dr. Madeline Leininger. She was a nursing professor who actually got her doctorate in anthropology, the study of humans. And in the 1960s, she formalized this transcultural nursing specialty using a theory called her cultural care theory, aimed to meet the needs of culturally congruent nursing care. She was recognizing that even as early as the 1960s, our country was becoming more diverse and a beautiful melting pot of all different beliefs and values and cultures and races and ethnicities. And how, as nurses, do we navigate providing excellent care to a very diverse population? And so this cultural theory that she came up with really helps guide as a blueprint our nursing care, the decisions and actions and care that we made that are tailor-made to fit each patient's unique cultural values, beliefs, and life ways. So some basic concepts in transcultural nursing. Transcultural nursing focuses on the comparative study and analysis of subcultures and cultures. So cultures and cultural groups are spoken about in terms of caring behaviors and care preferences in terms of healthcare, the nursing care that they hope to have, that cultural's health beliefs, culture-bound illnesses, values, attitudes, and beliefs, and patterns of behavior that are culturally influenced. And transcultural nursing also seeks to develop a specialized science and humanistic body of knowledge. It's really a specialty of knowledge within the nursing profession on how to care for a diverse population. So we're going to run through a bunch of different terms that are important to provide some framework for this class and for our understanding of transcultural nursing. I would encourage you to write down each definition as we go through them, pause, and then flip whatever you're working on over and rewrite that term in your own words so that you really understand what it means. So we're just going to rattle through a bunch of different terms here. I encourage you to pause as needed. Culture, the learned, shared, and transmitted values, beliefs, norms, and life ways of a particular group of people that guide thinking, decisions, and actions in a patterned way. Culture serves as a blueprint for understanding, explaining, and predicting people's lifeways over time and in different geographic locations. Non-ethnic culture is culture that is shared by people based on non-ethnic group definitions. So patients may identify with a cultural group based on their socioeconomic status, their ability or disability, sexual orientation, age, occupation, profession, etc. So you might have patients who come in and say that they're retired. That is a non-ethnic cultural group. You might have a patient in the deaf community. You might work with low-income patients. That would be a socioeconomic non-ethnic culture. And so we navigate not only cultures in terms of geographic locations, but also non-ethnic cultural groups as well. Culture-specific, particular patterns, beliefs, and values or behaviors that tend to be specific or unique to a specific group and not tend to be shared with members of other cultures. Cultural universal, there are some things that it's just about being human. And so cultural universal are those commonly shared values, norms of behavior, and life patterns that are similarly held among cultures about what it means to exist on this earth, human behavior and lifestyles. There are different terms used to describe groups of people. Ethnicity refers to the way in which one identifies the learned aspects of themselves. This can involve shared culture, language, beliefs, and worldviews. Multi-ethnicity is individuals that may not belong to one particular ethnic group and may identify with multiple groups. And race attempts to describe the biologic and physical traits that categorize people. We can kind of consider the genetic component of that when we talk about race. And race categories are used by the government for the US Census. There are other terms that are used to describe groups of people. Indigenous people refer to an ethnic cultural group that originates from a specific geographic region. And these tend to be tribes or cultures that have been associated with the geographic area for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So for example, the Maori, the Inuit, the Aborigines, the Mayas, the Lakota, the Peoria, the Kaskaskia, the Miami, and so on. Minority groups are a category of people defined by race, ethnicity, or indigenous people group who experience relative disadvantage to a dominant societal group. And these groups may experience financial, social, educational, or other forms of oppression or disparity. Minority groups often face discrimination in multiple areas of life, including housing, employment, healthcare, education, and others. And while discrimination may be committed by individuals, it can also occur through structural inequalities in which rights and opportunities are not equally accessible to all. The language of minority rights is often used to discuss laws designated to protect minority groups from discrimination and afford them equal social status to the dominant group. And we'll be exploring this idea of minority groups and discrimination through the resources and texts that we'll be reading in this course. And finally, nationality is an individual's belonging or citizen to a particular nation. So my sister, for example, has dual citizenship. So she's an American citizen and she's also an Australian citizen. So that would be her nationality. Terms about cultural acquisition. Acculturation describes when someone retains their own culture within a minority community, but at the same time starts to adapt or include some aspects of a majority culture. So if you have a family that immigrates from India, for example, that family may make beautiful traditional foods from their homeland, but maybe once in a while they're also cooking like cheeseburgers. So that is retaining some of their culture while also including some aspects of a majority culture. Assimilation is the process of adapting another group's culture, norms, practices, to the extent where you start losing your own culture with the adoption of a new culture. Assimilation, for example, my sister moved to Australia 10 years ago, and now she does that like funny, well, it's funny to me, that funny Australian spelling where they include E's And they use S's instead of Z's in certain words, like socialize would have an S instead of a Z. That's assimilation. So all of her texts, instead of saying mom, she says mum. In her text, she's assimilated to the Australian culture over the last 10 years. Enculturation is the process of learning the rules and skills necessary to interact and contribute within a cultural group. Learning the norms within a particular region, community, or culture. So when I first went to visit my sister in Australia, I was driving on the left because I knew you were supposed to do that, but I was still walking on the sidewalk on the right, and I kept like running into people, or they'd kind of give me funny looks. And I realized that not only do you drive on the left there, but you also walk on the left of the sidewalk. So that process of enculturation is learning those norms within a culture. Okay, terms of cultural knowledge, things that we know about a culture. We either have insider knowledge or we're looking at a culture from the outside. So from your own culture, you have emic knowledge, insider knowledge that you know because you're part of that community. Etic knowledge is when we are looking and learning about a culture, but we are not from that culture ourselves. So it's the professional or research knowledge that we gain as an outsider. Additional terms that help define and explain transcultural nursing include things like diversity. Cultural diversity is the quality of having many different cultures, as opposed to a monoculture or homogenization of cultures. Culture diversity is beneficial as it provides a perspective, lots of variety of perspectives, points of views, backgrounds, lifestyles, experiences, interests, preferences, and beliefs. And that diversity provides just a beautiful community in which we want to live, and hopefully something that we can value in our course as we work together this semester. Okay, ethnocentrism and cultural imposition. So these are some things that we will explore as negative aspects of culture, and things we're going to try to avoid as we learn about different cultures. Ethnocentrism is this belief that your own cultural values or beliefs are better, more correct, or should be dominant, as if the world revolves around you and your culture. Cultural imposition is when one tries to impose their own cultural patterns, practices, or beliefs on another. Stereotyping, ascribing or a fixed overgeneralized belief about a particular group, culture, or class of people to a person, making the assumption that everybody in that group is exactly the same. Stereotyping is a fine line to walk because we're going to learn generalizations about different cultural groups and different religious groups as tools and knowledge in our toolbox on how we can provide patient-centered care. But we have to recognize that we can't assume things of our individual patient. So when we walk into our patient's room, we're going to take this general body of knowledge, but we're going to make sure that we're really curious and learning about the individual in front of us, and applying patient-centered care. Generalizations, the process in which attributes found in specific examples or individuals are ascribed or generalized to the entire group or population. For example, Americans drive pickups and eat cheeseburgers. That is an overgeneralization of Americans, and we're going to try to avoid generalizations in this class. Racism and discrimination. This course has a lot of emphasis on social justice initiatives and perspectives. And so these are some terms that will be helpful as we navigate that. Prejudice is a biased, preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Prejudice often evolves from fear of differences or misunderstandings of people different than ourselves. Discrimination is the unjust, unfair, or biased treatment of an individual or a group of individuals based on specific characteristics, whether that is race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexual orientation, ability, level of attractiveness, body size, and so forth. And then finally, racism, the individual or systemic oppression, antagonism, prejudice, discrimination, or malice directed against a person or persons on the basis of their membership to a particular racial, ethnic, or cultural group, and typically a marginalized or minority group. Okay, we're going to continue building on this knowledge so we can apply it in class. There's a couple theories in transcultural nursing that we need to understand. And the Madeline Leininger's theory of cultural care diversity and universality and the Sunrise model is the foundational theory and framework for transcultural nursing. She was the forerunner of this movement in the 50s and 60s. The second theory that we'll be exploring in this class is Giger and Davidhizar's transcultural assessment model. It talks about different aspects of one's culture to assess when we are asking a patient about themselves, so we can have a good understanding of who they are. The Purnell model of cultural competence informs us on the different tasks or work that we do as healthcare providers to provide cultural competent care. The Campinha-Bacote model of cultural competence talks about how we as healthcare providers should use knowledge of culture to inform our delivery of healthcare. So let's go ahead and unpack these four theories now. The first one is Leininger's Sunrise Enablers model. And you can see here that cultural care is informed by and informs many different things. So you'll see that the arrows in this model go both ways, which means it informs both ways, both up and down. So cultural care is impacted and influences their worldview. And worldview is influenced and influences cultural and society structure dimensions. So different cultural dimensions include things like kinship and social factors, religious and spiritual beliefs, technology, political and legal factors, economic factors, education, biologic factors, and so on. And these influences both influence and are influenced by care expressions, patterns, and practices, the beliefs about healthcare and how one cares for themselves. And healthcare is driven by generic or folk care, as well as integrative care practices that they do in the home and in the community, and then our component of professional care practices. And so as professional care providers, we need to consider all aspects of culture and cultural beliefs to best provide patient-centered care. The Giger and Davidhizar transcultural assessment model talks about a culturally diverse individual having different factors that really kind of dictate their cultural beliefs, how they communicate, their perceived understanding of personal space, how their culture socially organizes, is it a matriarchal society, is it patriarchal, and so on. Biological variations within a culture, environmental control. If you're talking about a low-income community as a subculture, there's not a lot of environmental control that they have over things like their water source or food deserts. And then what is this person's understanding of time? Is time something that, is controlled, or is it very strict and on a schedule? The next one here is the Purnell model of cultural competence. And this model talks about various aspects that really define what a culture is. And I actually really like this model in terms of understanding the different components of culture. And so you'll see in the inner circle that there are multiple, I think there's 12 actually, different components of culture and cultural beliefs and understandings. So things like what is a culture's view on pregnancy and birth and death rituals, spirituality. I can't see very close. I have to get closer. Okay. The high-risk behaviors within that culture, nutrition, what do they believe about health and food, and so on. And all of these 12 components really guide cultural beliefs of a group. And that can be applied to either the individual person, to a family. What are these implications on the community, and then the global society as a whole? And then the last one we're going to talk about here is the Campinha-Bacote method or model of cultural competence. And I love this one for talking about the work that we do as nurses to provide culturally competent care. Culturally competent care starts with cultural awareness, recognizing that we live in a diverse society and that cultural differences require us to have skill in caring for patients in a transcultural model. Cultural desire, we have to want to be curious about different cultures and want to improve our skills in this area. Cultural skill means we need to have the skills to navigate caring for people who have different beliefs, values, and perspectives than we do. Cultural encounters, we need to practice what we preach. We need time with patients of different belief systems and values and cultural and subcultural groups, so we can practice working with them. And that's what we do in our community-based learning and in our clinical settings. And cultural knowledge. We need to have broad understanding of cultural groups and religious groups so that we can have those tools in our toolbox, that knowledge, that when patients self-identify with a specific culture or religious belief, we at least have some understanding of what that looks like. This screenshot just talks more about those 5 components of the Campinha-Bacote model that I just talked about. So if you feel free to screenshot this or pause and write these down if you want. Another aspect of this course, and really for me, the heart of where I'm approaching this course from, is cultural humility. And I'll get into kind of how I approach that as an individual and as your professor when we meet in person. But cultural humility is a dynamic and lifelong process focusing on oneself, self-reflection, and personal critique. The National Institute of Health, the NIH, defines cultural humility as a lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique, whereby the individual not only learns about another's culture, but one starts with an examination of their own beliefs and cultural identities. So this requires us to requires the ability to maintain interpersonal stance that is other-oriented in relation to aspects of cultural identity that are important for the other person. It's really that patient-centered care. What does that patient want from us? What do they need from us? What's going to be valuable to them? It seeks to fix power imbalances, that social justice component, and includes aspiring to develop partnerships with peoples and groups to advocate for others. And advocacy is at the heart of what we do as nursing. And finally, the optional text for this book, for this class, you did not need to buy it, is this Transcultural Concepts in Nursing Care by Andrews et al., the 8th edition. And really the backbone of this textbook is the interprofessional practice model that Andrews and Boyle came up with. And this really just kind of provides an understanding of how healthcare providers can provide culturally transcultural care. And so it requires us to consider the context of the individual patient and their culture, their environment, the social and economic factors, religious, education, political, legal, moral, philosophical, biological, genetic, and tech factors, and how all of those factors play into health-related values, attitudes, beliefs, and practices. And then when we have the knowledge of those different areas, we're going to look at the client as the heart and center of the care delivery, along with their family and significant other. We may be interacting with religious or spiritual healers for that patient. They may be having folk or traditional healers help care for them. And then us as credentialed healthcare providers come in as part of that team. And as we're providing this culturally competent care, we need to consider things like safety and quality, accessibility, affordability, evidence-based practice, and culturally competent care. And then finally, over there on the right side of the screen, you'll see this problem-solving process, and it looks very familiar to the nursing process. So really, if we just use the nursing process, the ADPI to approach nursing care, whether we're caring for someone of the same cultural background or different, we're going to be able to navigate this. This slide here just talks a little bit more about that interprofessional practice model by Andrews and Boyle. Feel free to screenshot. It's what we just talked about. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for our week 1 module lecture. Thank you so much for studying with me today. I'm looking forward to unpacking this and analyzing and applying it and get into activities in class. So I will see you in class, and I hope you have a great day.